Fix that. Oh man, it's acting up all weird today, people. All right.
There you go.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Comics de la Morte, episode 96. Getting up there to almost 100. And we got a returning guest, Mike Uhlir, and for StarFell. And we have a person already in the comments. How you doing, Christy? Thank you for coming by. So yeah, I mean, really loving the books and just can't wait to read issue 3 because I know you got that one in development.
Yep, we just started production. I think I gave you the sneak peek, like our first page
Yeah.
we got today. So yeah, we're
Mm-hmm.
excited, and yeah, we're rocking and rolling on it.
Yeah.
This one we're doing without Kickstarter, so it's a little bit more stressful than the last book, but
Oh, I bet.
yeah.
I mean, but it kind of like, how would you say it's less stressful? You said, like, explain for that anybody out there.
Well, when you're using Kickstarter, obviously you're getting in funding. It's crowdfunding. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
working with a budget, it's just a little easier. You've pre-planned it all
Yeah.
out. But when you're going without Kickstarter, um, you just got to budget a little tighter. So it gets stressful.
Yeah.
And there's things when you're making a comic, it's very easy to go over budget. You can, if you've read StarFell, the dialogue gets a little lengthy. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
planning for like a 22-page book, it easily spill over to 24, 26 pages. And then it's like, you got to cover that overhead. So it does get a little stressful, but also somewhat easier because when you're doing Kickstarter, you do have to worry about fulfillment, which is kind of like the scariest aspect of it. To make sure that the people that have crowdfunded are, they're going to get like a quality book. They're going to get quality merch to go along with it. And so I have a high level of OCD. So, when you're packaging books, you want to make sure like nothing's getting wrinkled. And, it takes me forever to package up a Kickstarter reward. I just want to make sure it's like good to go.
Well, it's probably more of a hassle too, because a lot of people are not just buying the book, they're buying everything else. So now you have to take in consideration, okay, did I ship off everything that this person asked?
Yeah, yes. And that actually happened with this. The last time we did Kickstarters, you have different tier rewards. Some people get 2 books, some people get 4, and there's different covers. So one person accidentally got like a cover that they didn't order. They wanted the other cover, and I just felt like rotten about it. So it was like, okay, well, let me get you and then I'll send you extra. So I gave them like a free shirt. I told them to go on the site and pick out whatever shirt they wanted. And so yeah, there's just a stress level with it, but it's just more. You just want people to be happy and make sure they're getting what they signed up for.
Gotcha. That's cool.
Yeah.
So I could definitely, let me see. But yeah, definitely people, if you haven't already, go to the website and read this book. Well, both books, because it is just a really good series. And that's just not because I like the book and, we talk outside of the show. But yeah, it's just really good stuff. I mean, definitely anybody who's like into like the 1950s genre or the 1960s with the creature features, especially the second issue has a good element in there with the monster that I really like. So, and
which one's that?
Where it kind of had like the bug creature, the half man, half bug. It reminded me of the Fly,
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah. That was the little side story at the end of each book was that creature, which in issue 3, if you haven't read StarFell yet, it's kind of got a slow burn, so there hasn't been any sort of epic fights, so to speak, or monster fights. But so in issue 3, that all kind of comes to a head. So we're real excited about that part of the story. Yeah, it's in right now. If you want to read both books, they're free on the homepage of starfellstudios.com, free download.
Right
Just
there, down
have at
below.
it. Yep.
That's the website.
Free reading.
But I definitely reading the book, even though you have these monsters going to be terrorizing. I find the family more creepy. You know?
Yeah, and that goes back to like that's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or House of a Thousand Corpses. It's like there's people can be so much more terrifying than monsters ever could be, but it's so much fun.
Oh yeah,
to see.
Exactly. But yeah, exactly. And it's like you kind of wonder, like, because with the main storyline, I really like how you have like the whole teenagers things because yes, they kind of did that in the 50s, but it plays homage to the 80s because you had a lot of
Mhm.
80s horror movies that had teenagers being the main ride, like the Monster Squad and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I like just I like how you're having the development like in the beginning of the second book. You're kind of doing like a flash forward and then you're doing a flashback showing how it's going to lead up to that point. But you're just
yeah.
giving people a taste like,
Of what's
okay, this is what's going to look like, what's to come.
yeah.
And I like that, sure you see that a lot of the times in movies, but I like to see that in a comic book as well, just
Yeah.
because, I mean, you want to get the reader wanting to come back for more.
Yeah, I just kind of because I knew it was going to be a slow burn to get to that point, and I think part of it might have been me being a little impatient because I kind
Mhm.
of wanted to see it myself for just a little bit,
Yeah.
and I thought that would just been a great way to kind of tease that what is to come, But it
Mhm.
did kind of the way the panel layout went, it really tied it into the present tense of the story itself. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like there are parts in the story coming up that I have been thinking about for 2 years, and I'm just like super
Yeah.
excited to finally see it come. Um, so, uh, but yeah, going back to being Monster Squad, I'm a child of the '80s, and that's
Right.
what I grew up with. It
Mhm.
was Monster Squad,
Exactly.
and it's not even Monster Squad. Like even in Critters,
Oh, yeah,
the main
Critters.
yeah,
Yeah.
the main protagonist of that story was a teenager. I think he's on the Orville now as well.
Yes. Yes, he is. He is.
Yeah.
He's part of the crew, and I always thought that was pretty funny.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think you grew up as a kid in the '80s. It's just like the protagonists were kids, and it was fun for me back then to watch it. And I just thought it's a great formula to kind of write about, and it's easy
Oh,
to
oh, yeah.
kind of go back to thinking how you were as a kid, and the things you would say and how you would react to sort of these certain situations that they get put into. Um, and I think even in Starfell, where Levi's having this weird interaction with Delilah, who's just crazy and all over the place, I think we can all relate to being a kid and growing up and having that one kid that was older, but you were just terrified of them. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of where that had come from.
Yeah, because I mean, even though the first movie took place in like I think the 50s or 60s, even with like the movies The Blob, it
Hmm.
always had like be the main character to help save the day was pretty much a teenager. And
Yeah. Yep.
you know, I don't like I think our pop culture has just drawn so much like with Stranger Things and stuff like that, where it's like, if you have a horror movie or a horror genre where you're taking on a bunch of threats, just send the teenagers in and they're gonna save the day. Because the
Yeah.
adults are pretty much stupid and they don't know what they're doing.
Well, yeah, the teenagers are just too naive to the world around them. So there's this sense of they're just not afraid of anything because they don't, they're not rationalizing the actual danger out of them. Whereas, when you're an adult,
Yeah.
you start to develop all these different fears because you're completely aware of, all these horrible things that can happen to you. So I think it gives kids like kind of this
Yeah.
like invulnerability or thought of invulnerability that'll make them kind of press
Mhm.
forward and put themselves in these crazy situations. It's fun to write, and but yeah, there's a lot of homage to that. To how teenagers were in the 50s and in those horror movies, and trying to pull from those. I'm constantly going back to like Invasion of the Body Snatchers and stuff like that, and just trying to get some good monster ideas from it, and see how those play out.
Yeah. So with the second issue, I know with the first one you were saying it was a lot of dialogue, which I don't have a problem with that. Some people do, but it's like when you look at the 1950s comics, like the EC comics and stuff like that, a lot of it was very dialogue,
Yeah.
but it's like if you have a lot of dialogue, at least make it there for a purpose,
Yeah.
Don't have it where you're just trying to like just throw a bunch of stuff in there, because if the readers feel that it's too lengthy and the paragraph there is not there for a reason, then cut it out. But, but I really, oh, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I really like, a part of me is like, I really like the colors that you use. But what time period does this take place again? I can't remember if we talked about that.
So this takes place in 1962.
Yeah. Okay.
It's kind of like it takes a lot from 50s horror movies, but I just put it in the early 60s.
Yeah.
I think there was a reason why I did that, and right now it is like it is escaping me. I can't remember why it had to be 62, but yeah, that's the year it takes place.
Like when you were making this, did you feel like, should I make this color or black or white? Just because, some people are like, oh, horror comics are so much better in black and white. But then when you think of like some of your scenes, like with the whole alien meteorites with the glow of the purple, I think it's purplish, right? Yeah.
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 Yes. It's like a magenta hue. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. With adding that color for the meteorite, it just sells a little bit better. Maybe they could have done it like with the whole Sin City, where you could have had just certain items be colored to grow focus on that. But what made you want to pick color instead of the black and white?
So the book itself takes place off of a real town here in Alabama called Wetumpka, which it sits on the meteor crater. But so if you walk around,
that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and when you walk around the town, especially in the parks, there's these quartz crystals all over the place. I mean, you're literally like kicking them up with your foot, and you can pull them out of the ground. And they had like a pinkish hue to it, and I really wanted to take as much as I could from that town and put it in the book. So that's why the meteor crystal does have that color. So the book originally was black and white. When Lucas started working on the book, it was going to be black and white, and he was drawing and shading that way. So the first few pages of the first StarFell issue they're shaded a little differently in the ink because it was going to be black and white. And then, I'm going to credit my girlfriend on this one. When I showed her like one of the panels in black and white and it had all the crystals, she was like, you can't really tell, what it is. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll just make those things magenta colored or purple and everything else will be black and white. And then Lucas, the head artist, the lead artist on the project, he's like, well, I'll introduce you to my buddy. He's a colorist, and we'll see how it looks. And then the colorist just turned out to be such a phenomenal artist that it was just like, you know what, screw it, this thing's going in color. And he is. That's kind of one of the. Both artists are amazing, and one of the shining points is like the coloring in the book. It's very vibrant. So I'm glad that decision and choice was kind of made, but it was a very fluid one. It wasn't originally it was supposed to be black and white. I wanted it to be, kind of like the Walking Dead comic books, black and white. Set so many different tones, and that's kind of how it was going to be, and But now, no looking back, it's colored the whole way through. But I will preface to say there will be characters in the story that are in black and white, but that'll show up in issue 3, and you'll see as like why these characters are black and white. So there should be this really cool contrast between this colorful world and these black and white characters.
Very cool.
So it should get pretty neat. Very excited about this 3rd book.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if you did it for the Kickstarter, but it's just really cool to think about like how you could actually go around and find like pieces of that meteorite or so. Like it would have been awesome if you're like, hey, besides getting the comic, you're gonna get a piece of the meteorite in the mail, you know. That would have been a great selling point, like as a necklace.
Yes. And I definitely thought about that to the point where the trunk of my car for, I would say, almost the better part of the year was filled with those things. I'd walk around purposely picking them up. But you know, with the book being taken part in that town, I had to make sure I was pretty sensitive to the town itself and their historical society. So I didn't know if there was some gray area where I could take these geological, quartz and rocks and then just distribute them all willy-nilly. So there was kind of this respect with the town where it's like, maybe I shouldn't do that until I ask permission.
Gotcha.
But I will say the town has been just incredible about this whole thing. The books selling their local bookstore. I'm doing a lecture at their museum next month, and they've just been awesome about it. But that if I get permission to be able to put those as Kickstarter rewards, then I definitely will for the next time we do one.
Even if you don't do as a Kickstarter, like take it to cons,
Yeah,
that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, it would be. That's definitely something that's been on my radar to do. Like I said, I mean, they were rolling around the back of my trunk for the longest period of time. They have one in the museum, and you can't take a picture of it. It was like donated by somebody, and it is this massive. I mean, you probably can't see my hands. Massive piece of like this rare quartz crystal that is valued at I don't even know what, and I don't think they do either.
Gotcha.
And it's in their museum. So anyone's ever traveling through Wetumpka, Alabama, stop by that museum and check that place out, because it's got some pretty cool stuff in it. The history of the town is very rich. But yeah, I think that should be something that hopefully I can do in the future. But it was something I felt like I needed to get permission for. Yeah.
That's cool. I definitely like that too. I mean, I'm trying to do that with my comic, but it's just great when you have like comics that have like real life places and things, just because it gives like people who are part of that town, like yours, like connection to the book, and that makes it want to even buy it, even if they're not like sci-fi or horror. People just want to buy something like that because it represents where they grew up.
Yes. And I think that's probably been some of the most positive feedback I've gotten so far about the book. We sell the books there in Wetumpka, but there's a comic book shop whose bread and butter is selling indie books, which is fantastic. But we were selling the books there, and this little old lady was like, I've never read comic books before, but because it's about this, and she loves the books, and she was there to buy the second one, and she bought all the different covers.
That's awesome.
Posters. Yeah.
That's
and it was
awesome.
So it's cool. It's if you can introduce comics to somebody who's never read them before, and they kind of can see like, oh wow, this is just as good, if not better, than a novel or a traditional book. It opens up a whole new world for them. And the thing about comic books is there's a comic book out there for everyone. And everyone. It doesn't matter what walk of life you're from. It's there for you to read.
I mean, sadly, everything's just superhero wise, but I mean, during the 50s and 60s, you had horror comics, you had comics, and I haven't really looked into it, but I hopefully the romance genre is coming back, because all comics and genres deserve to have their moment of shine. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
but
I
when
agree.
you were,
And
oh, go ahead. What you were gonna say?
oh no, I stopped.
Oh yeah, but definitely what I like, even though the first one was really good, I like this one because I don't know, it's just you're going more into like I said before, yes, you have the monster in the book, but you're seeing exactly how crazy this family is.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
you know, I'm not gonna spoil it, but something happens to the boy and this woman, and I'm
Hmm.
like, "Oh my gosh." Like, that's horrible.
Yeah, yeah, and that's built, and that's kind of building up that fear to that moment, And her character is, she's very sweet and nice and like very
Yeah,
playful. And so and Levi, he goes through moments where he lowers his guard. He'll pick his guard back up because she's doing something weird, but then he'll lower it, and it's just kind of that build to where what happens. Um, and of course,
and I
she's just
think
a
I think it plays so well that it's a young boy talking to an older woman instead of like two adults because you have that child innocence going on, and that's
Mhm.
why that whole like dialogue and everything that was just more of a shocker.
Yeah, yeah. In that, that scene. Well, I probably can't talk about it unless people read the book, but that scene comes from like, my mom giving me a haircut as a little kid, and there's always that
Yeah,
fear. You know what I'm talking about? Like
yeah,
they
yeah,
just always just get they mess up and they get just a little piece of your ear, and that it's just, I hate it
right,
when my mom gave me haircuts as a kid. So I think that's kind of where that
yeah,
came from. That and being,
right,
Quentin Tarantino fan,
right.
Reservoir Dogs kind of thing. But
But
yeah.
there was a point everyone all cut, and they were letting their parents give it to them.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, and writing, and her character, just like Texas Chainsaw Massacre with the hitchhiker, being
Oh
around
yeah,
someone that's just kind of, to me, he was more scarier than Leatherface by
yes,
far, just because he was so amped up and all over the place. Where
mhm.
and there are people like that in real life, in your
Yeah,
day-to-day life. If you're going out, if you ever run across someone that's that intense, it is, it's pretty jarring.
mhm.
It's just so different than the norm that you just don't know how to react to it. Our normal reaction is just to always be polite to somebody, even when they're acting
Yeah,
that way. And
yeah, for
yeah.
sure. And I know the first one you said it was very dialogue, but with now the second one and the third one being made, do you feel that it's a lot easier for you now? That it's like you're like, okay, this is where the fun begins. Now I don't have to focus on so much of like doing the introductions. Now I could just take care of the dessert that I really want to get into.
Yes, yes, for sure. That, and it's there's that where, if there's not much going on in a scene, if there's no action, then I just feel like there just needs to be more talking, and you can really understand the character, and kind of get the cadence of the way they speak. Um,
Yeah.
but also, I'm kind of learning as I'm going, because when you write a huge chunk of dialogue and a panel's like so big, the artists have
Yeah.
to try to fit that in there. And
Mhm.
so you kind of just learn to edit yourself a little bit, not just for your sake or the reader's sake, but the poor artist that's got to figure out how to squish all that dialogue in there. And like you said,
Yeah.
when dialogue makes sense, if it makes sense and it's applicable to the story, then it should stay in. But I think sometimes, if I can go back and do an edit here and there, I definitely would. Um,
Yeah.
but for the most part, I felt pretty happy about everything. And not to bring up like Quentin Tarantino movie again, but
Mhm.
that's the same thing. Like it's just so much dialogue and long edits, but it slowly builds, slowly builds, slowly builds until something crazy happens. And so it's like you got to sit through, like his movies. You'll sit through 2 hours of just what's going on here, like in Hateful Eight, and then you get 30 minutes of
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
whoa. okay, that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Well, that's the thing. As for a movie or for a comic, you got to make stuff where it's not going to be predictable what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem with some horror movies is like you'll have the music, like suspenseful music playing. I'm like, why are you going to have the music playing? Because now people are going to expect something that's going to
Yes.
happen, you know?
Yep. Yeah. Um, what I just watched a movie not too long ago, and I don't think it really had any. Have you watched Barbarian yet?
No, I haven't.
Well, yeah, definitely check it out. I think it's on for free on HBO Max, or no, it's on
Yeah.
one of the streamings. But they did a real good job where they didn't do the suspenseful music, so when something happened, it was like very like what the, it caught you off guard, and it does kind of ruin the moment. Um, when they do that. And I think it's the same thing in horror movies where like they got the fridge door open and they open a certain way in front of the camera and you just already know that there's someone standing behind it as soon as they close it, and it just kind of ruins the jump scene.
Right.
But yeah,
right.
I feel the same way. I think horror movies that don't have a soundtrack are, for the most part, way more, intense and scary.
Yeah. Or sometimes they'll have the music playing, suspenseful music playing, and then nothing scary happens. It's like, why?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a false tease.
Yeah.
Or
And depending
sometimes,
on what the music is, you're like paying rights to have that in the movie, you know?
yeah, you're paying a good chunk of change just to put that in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
I mean, there was one movie that used horror music, and it was not a horror movie, but it just like so. There Will Be Blood with Daniel Day Lewis. It's a movie about oil for the most part.
Yeah.
That's kind of a loose interpretation of what it's about. But they played like real violin strings horror music in it, and and it really makes that movie way more intense. It's just funny certain ways you can do that,
Yeah.
um, and evoke different emotions for sure. Um, but yeah, and it's all about that. To me, it's all about the long build up to, you know, to deliver something pretty cool at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, besides the creature that you have in this book, do you like? I think I saw pictures on Instagram. Are you planning to have like more spear up? Because I know you were saying like in the book description, you were going to have like I think like different monsters appear and then people be mutated, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
It's gonna hit. Yeah, it's gonna hit every aspect of those movies back then. There'll be monster eating plants. There'll be monster eating mutated animals. There'll be zombies. There'll be
Yeah.
ghosts. There's gonna be like a sci-fi robot in there from like the day the Earth stood still, like that kind
Oh,
of
that's
deal.
awesome. That'd be
Yeah. So
yeah.
and that shows up in part in issue 3. And there's a character in the book. We kind of hinted at it towards the end of issue 2 of like she kind of has this picture, this power to bring in pictures. We hinted at the
Yeah.
beginning of issue 2, and then really hinted at the end, and that's going to bring in like a whole different catalog of mythological creatures and I mean all kinds of stuff. It's her power is going to just really bring in some wacky stuff into that world to kind of help everyone out. And but yeah, it's every 50 sci-fi monster character or a version of them. It's not like a complete ripoff. It's just kind of like a different take on it, but they all show up in there. And yeah, there's some really cool stuff that I'm looking forward to, especially when we get into the horror stuff. And there's going to be some pretty. It's an all ages book, but there's going to be some pretty gnarly things that happen in there. So
Awesome.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now I know because I know with mine, I have like a world of monsters as well. For anybody out there writing a comic, how do you explain to people not to do too much at once? Because it's hard. You're like a kid at a candy store, and you're
Mhm.
wanting to have all these different, like, 1950s, 60s, like, sci-fi references in there.
Yeah. You gotta, it's about pacing yourself. And for me, I don't know if it just came with age,
Mhm.
because I've always tried to write. I probably have 50 different things that were 20% finished. Because you get
Gotcha.
excited about an idea and then you sit and you start writing, but then, a squirrel runs by and then you're chasing that. You know what I'm saying? Like your ADD's all over the place. Um,
Yeah.
so
A lot of
with
artists do that too. They don't have
Yeah,
like, they have a bunch of sketches that they never go back and finish.
yeah, exactly. And so I think it's just being patient. Being patient pays off. You know, and that's the best way to say it. But I mean, I not only have I been antsy about it, but I know Lucas, the artist
Mhm.
on it, he's been dying to get to those points, and I felt so bad. I don't want to say I misled him about the first book, but when I told him about the project, he was super excited, and he's like, "I can't wait to start doing this." And we got into the first book, and he's like, "When do I do monsters?" And I'm like, probably not until the second
Oh,
one.
so
And
he's a fan of he's a fan of the genre as well.
Well, he
That's good.
just yeah. Well, I mean, he just loves to draw different things, and he loves to draw monsters. And I mean, he wants to draw everything under the sun, and so I think yeah. So I felt very bad. That's how the creature on those last 2 pages of the book where the guy gets bitten mutates. That
Yeah.
wasn't in there originally. It wasn't going to be in there.
Oh,
I
gotcha.
put it in there because I mean that part of the story was going to happen, but it wasn't going to happen to the next book. I just felt bad that he didn't get to draw any monsters, so I was like, you know what? Let's just do it here. We'll figure out a way to kind of put it in. Um,
Yeah.
but I will say in the next in issue 3, there's robots and monsters, and not only that, there's just a gnarly street fight. There's just more action, and but at least it makes sense. It makes sense that there was a slow burn. You get to know the characters for those first couple issues, and hopefully now you'll feel for them when they get hurt. That
Yeah.
was uh, but yeah, I think it's just being patient. And I don't know, for me personally, it was something that came with age, but I
Mhm.
know people that are like in their early 20s and they're just as patient as a rock, and
Yeah.
they can do it. Um, but and I'm sure too, when it comes to making a comic book, it's you just go one page at a time, and
Yeah.
sometimes you go one panel at a time. And if you can go one panel at a time, you're in a good spot. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sure. That's awesome. But yeah, because man, I just looking at the book, like I know when I read the first 2 issues, I read it through, but then I went back in to just look at Easter eggs and just
Hmm.
look like, oh wow, this remind me of that movie. This remind me of that movie. And
Yeah.
it's just really fun when you could really sit back and do that because you could see the passion and, like, the references in there. Like, for anyone who's, like, doing even if it's not a horror movie and it's like a romance or something, if you're gonna write a comic that takes place during a certain timeline, you have to make sure that it's believable, it's taking place during
Hmm.
that time, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. Um,
And
yeah.
I just love too how your characters seem like 3D in a way, like, you could actually tell that these characters have different emotions and different,
Hmm.
like, personalities. Like, you have in there, like the one from the 1980s Blob, you have the tough kid that everybody doesn't like and the
Hmm.
troublemaker, but, you could tell that he has a caring side to him
Yeah.
and, you know, a good guy side to him, and he just was dealt a bad hand in life. So
Yeah.
I really like that you took the time to like make those characters really complex like that.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, that's the fun part about it. And especially with that character. The two favorite characters to write for are him and Delilah, which is, the crazy girl.
Yeah.
Which I probably shouldn't call her that, but she's out there. But yeah, it's to show
I was
this
surprised.
softer
Well,
side.
I mean, I don't know if you're going to, but I'm surprised you didn't add like the popular girl, because back in the day, in the 50s and 80s, it was always the popular girl falling in love with the bad boy that saved the day.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, and I probably should put a popular kid in there. I hadn't even thought about, and I hadn't thought about that. And I think honestly, that just goes back to when I was in high school. I was just into punk rock. I was with the isolation crowd, like
Yeah.
kids that kept themselves when we went out skateboarding, and that was it. And then you kind of build like this kind of like distrust, maybe not distrust, but just a dislike for that other crowd.
Yeah.
I think that kind of carried over to my adult life a little bit, but that makes sense. I probably should throw one of those characters in there because they're going to react differently than the other kids, and that's actually a good idea. Yeah, I'm going to hang on to that one, man. Thank you for that. I'm going to hang on to that.
But yeah, so you want to talk a little bit more? I mean, I know we're halfway through the show already, because I know you've been watching a lot of creature features, and there's just so much we could talk about.
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, let's talk creature features.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up with the, I don't want to use Elvira, but we had our own public television station with a guy with the horrible Dracula costume on that, and that name of the show was Creature Features, and he would say it in this horrible Dracula voice.
Well, it's like down here in Florida, every Saturday they have a thing called Spanguli, and he's basically showing a bunch of old black and white horror movies.
You're near Tampa, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen them because my they grew up. I grew up in Lakeland as a kid.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking. Yes.
Yeah. But I think this is not the original. It's his son that took over. But they're doing that every Saturday night. So
yeah, that's fantastic. I didn't know that was still being carried on over there. But
it's like because I know as a kid up in Missouri, I used to watch the Late Night Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs.
Mm-hmm.
That was
yeah. He's still got his thing on Shudder.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah,
But it used to be on like what?
Was it Cinemax?
Was it Cinemax? Or was it USA channel?
It might have been USA. USA had
TNT.
It might have been USA. I know USA had a couple of them. They would play on Saturday afternoons, and that's the only time I could watch Friday the 13th growing up, was like on the Saturday afternoon USA, because it was just completely edited and you can watch it out. But my God, I wish streaming services like Netflix would, air stuff like that. If they could figure out a way to air certain content live, and that being one of them.
Oh yeah.
Just bring back the creature feature. It just introduces you to a world of, like, I don't want to say horrible B movies, because they're not. They're just so great and fun to watch. Like Troll. Yeah. That's how I got introduced to Troll, was by watching
the first Troll, not the second.
Troll, not the second Troll. Oddly enough, the in Troll 2, the dad with the horrible acting, he has a dentist practice about 20 miles up the road from me. So that's pretty.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people ask him about that.
Oh, I believe he's like a local celebrity up there, man. Like, to them, it's just this crazy movie that he did. And I mean, they made a documentary about that for Troll 2, like the worst movie ever made. It's so good. But,
yeah, that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah. But I mean, back to the creature features.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we could start off with Critters. I mean, oh, actually, no, we'll start off with Gremlins, because Gremlins is pretty much what said it all. And
yes,
just Gremlins, you could talk about this movie around Christmas time because it's a Christmas movie. It takes place around Christmas.
Yes.
Like when,
I mean,
like,
yeah. Go ahead.
Like
I'm sorry.
this past Christmas when I was watching Christmas movies, I was watching like the Muppets Christmas Carol, and then I was watching Gremlins,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
you know it's just an iconic movie, and just I don't know if you ever listened to the documentary about that, but they
Mm-mm.
were planning to go more like horror with that. Like originally, they were going to have it where the mother actually got her head cut off. Like this is
Really?
what they were planning to do with the movie. And then how
Yeah.
like you saw the dog tied up,
Hmm.
and I can't remember where the documentary I was listening to or if it was like them talking about it, but I think it was like on some type of show. But they were planning the dog to be like eaten alive too.
Oh my God.
Like,
Yeah, I
yeah,
was not aware of that
yeah,
because that
yeah.
movie's.
And
I mean, that movie's gnarly on its own as is. Um,
oh, I think it was YouTube because they talked about too how originally Stripe was going to be Gizmo. So Gizmo was actually originally going to turn evil. So yeah, I'm laying down a lot of crazy facts
yeah,
about this movie that they were
there,
planning to originally do.
there's a documentary about this.
Yeah, someone was talking about it on YouTube. I
Yeah.
can't remember where I was watching it, but it gave like information like they were planning to do. And I'm like, good, because I think it would have been like having the mother head cut off. Yeah, that would have been really, horror, even though people did die in that movie. But
Hmm.
I think them deciding to not have Gizmo become evil was a good call, just
Yeah.
because they sold so much merchandise. And yeah, and I oh yeah, it was a documentary because I remember them talking about how small the character was, that the character always broke down and it almost took like an hour or 4 hours just to fix it.
Well, I mean, yeah, that would have been a totally different movie. I
Yeah.
think
Mhm.
turning Gizmo because he was. I mean, I saw it as a kid, but he was like the safe space kind of sort
Yeah.
of thing for little kids. When he was around, there was a sense of comfort. And the only thing that made that movie feel light was him. It, yeah, that movie is
Yeah.
that ranks up there as easily my top 10 favorite movies of all time. I mean, just the scene where
Oh yeah, for sure.
the lab the chemistry teacher gets his hand caught in and bit by the gremlin, and just the cocooning stage. There's that whole metamorphosis thing that's just so terrifying to watch. Um,
Yeah.
who directed that? Was that Joe?
But
I
it
think that was
definitely
Joe
had its
Dante.
yeah, I think so. Yeah. But definitely it had its comedy too, with like them watching the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and all that
Hmm.
stuff. But overall, it was just a good movie. I mean, the second one, it had its good moments, but definitely the first one
Yeah,
couldn't, the first one was a classic.
yeah. It was a classic. It was well done. It's legitimately scary. Um, Especially for little kids. I mean, I saw that in the theater when I was 5. I remember it.
Yeah, it's
Remember
definitely
me.
scarier than the second one. The second one is more comedy based.
Yeah, it's just like I mean, Hulk Hogan's in it. So I
Yeah.
mean, in the second one, the
And then you
second
had
one,
them altering the formulas to turn into a spider, a bat, a
yeah,
talking one.
because I think that was just a thing back then in 1989, is everything kind of had to be like a mutation of something else. And it was, yeah, much more of a comedy.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
took place in the equivalent of like, I think, Trump Plaza or something like that. But the first one, like you said, it is legitimately a Christmas movie. Just even the opening
Yeah.
titles and the opening shot, it is. It's a Christmas movie that they released in the summer for some reason. Um,
Yeah.
but
Pretty
uh,
much.
yeah, no,
And
Gremlins ranks up there. I'm shocked and surprised they haven't done a remake of it.
yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, another cool fact is that if you watch The Town, uh,
Hmm.
it talked about like how tedious it was to make the fake snow. But I think in the documentary it said The Town, if it looks familiar to you because it was shot around where Back to the Future was.
Yeah, it was shot on the Universal set. right? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I thought that
Uh,
was cool.
there's shots of that townscape, that square in Twilight Zone episodes shot on
Yeah,
Universal. Like you'll see it sometimes watching, their movies. Like that is that Hill Valley? What is that? Um,
yeah,
yeah, but I mean they just Gremlins is they did an amazing job on that, and
yeah,
growing up watching it, I mean I must have seen it 100 times as a kid. Probably more so
yeah,
than adult. That's definitely one that gets watched once a year,
yeah.
easily.
I wish I had it too. I wish I had it too, but I think it was McDonald's that had it, that they were selling the vinyl record where you could actually
Mhm.
listen the whole
Yep.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. That was the thing back in the day. They had that for
Yeah.
Gremlins, and Burger King had one for Alf. It was a little paper record of
Yeah.
Alf singing.
Mhm.
Just a wild time to
Right.
be alive. Um,
But definitely Gremlins, they brought if it because the success of Gremlins, it just brought in so much psycher features. Like with Critters,
yes.
I would say Critters was definitely a we'll talk about Ghoulies, in a little bit, but definitely Critters, especially the first one and the second one, like, were, like, really, really good.
Yeah.
Especially the first one where it's like you have, town family fighting against these things, and then them not just eating it alive, but they had needles that they shot out of
It
their
was.
body. It was
Mhm.
toxins. So, yeah, it
Yeah.
was just a really cool thing, and what I like about those, I can't remember if they were the sole person designing the creatures, but I know the creators of Killer Clowns from Outer Space,
Mhm.
they had a hand in helping to design the critters.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, whoever did it did a top-notch job, and I think,
Yeah.
like, Critters 1, is definitely scary, but I think Critters 2 sticks out to me as maybe not being so scary, but I remember having more of a traumatizing moment is when the Easter Bunny gets, like, filled up with a bunch of critters and he's like, I just remember that just freaking me out more I don't know why,
Well
but that
well, it was just not that, but literally the critter starts gnawing at his privates, I mean,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
it's yeah, um I mean, that's it. Critters. I'm trying to make sure I know which one's which. Critters 2, is that the one where they're also in like the restaurant, like, and they're falling in hot oil
Yeah.
and they're cooking? Yeah, that one just was so that I think that one had more of an impression on me than the first one. The first one was like kind of very dark, and when I mean dark, it was like lit dark. It was just a darker film, and I remember seeing that in theaters and then watching Critters 2 on VHS and thinking, this one is just a little bit more intense, for me, um, as a kid. But it's just, I think, there's a major difference between those and
Had
Gremlins,
none.
where Gremlins can be more playful, but Critters was just, there's just kind of nothing fun about it. It just looks like a miserable time having to deal with them. Even though they got a little comical
Well, what
in
I
2 and 3.
yeah. Oh, yeah. But what I liked so much about 2 is that when they all came together as a giant ball, that was
Yeah,
pretty
and they do
cool.
the yeah, and you just see all
Yeah.
these mouths as it's rolling. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and then you had the kind of intergalactic bounty hunters trying to chase him down. So there was that aspect of it,
Yeah.
which is really bizarre because they could
Yeah.
look at something and morph into it. And I remember like there was a scene where they're in a video store and there's a
Gonna
cutout
turn
of
into
Freddy
Freddy
Krueger.
Krueger. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're about to turn to Freddy
Yeah.
Krueger, and as a kid, you're just like, like you had your hopes up, like this is going to be something
Right.
cool. You got let
Exactly.
down, but yeah, that movie is just the creativity on that alone is just so cool, and that I mean that harkens, I mean that takes so much from like the 50s genre of like small town aliens come and just devour, you know, and like I said, the intergalactic bounty hunters trying to exterminate them. It's such a
Yeah.
good movie. Yeah.
Now, now with ghoulies though, I think like I know you have 1, 2, 3, at least 2 was just my favorite, and I think the best one out of them. Like
Yeah,
I
the
don't
one
know
with
if
the
you ever seen
circus or
Ghoulies
the
2. Yeah,
the
this
carnival.
yeah, it
Yeah.
the
Yep.
carnival.
Yep.
It was just because the first one and the other ones, when they started introducing like ghoulies that look like people, I just thought that was stupid, you know?
Yeah, and that was part 3 where I think that took place on a college campus, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, like, it
they
was like
had
a giant ghoulie. It was
humans.
like full
Yeah.
size, yeah.
Yeah, the giant ghoulie, they had a giant ghoulie in the second one because he was eating the little ones, but definitely just the second one was just so great because you had, you had one that flew, you had one that
Mhm.
looked
Like a
besides
rat.
yeah, like the rat, like
That
the ones you saw like even when they went to college, they had
Mhm.
it was always the rat, cat, and the frog.
Yeah.
Those were like the main three, but in the second one they had one that looked like a like almost like a gator. It walked on all four. Then you had one that was flying. Just a
And
really great movie.
yeah, you had the one that looked like a rat and it shot out snot that was like a
Hmm.
weird super glue, because the couple
Yeah.
that was kissing and he shot and it like hit their face. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, it was
And the
ghoulies.
iconic ending scene with the bathroom
Yeah.
in the toilet. Yeah.
Yeah, part 2 was miles better than the first one. The first one I just couldn't relate to it because it just seemed, I saw it as a little kid and I just couldn't understand. It's like all these couples going into a
Yeah.
mansion. I didn't really understand it at the time, and I was a
Yeah.
little bit older when Ghoulies
And
2 came out, and
and
appreciate it.
I wish I remember his name because he's a really good actor and he's an amazing actor and he's just been part of like sci-fi and horror like the uh uh what's his name? He was in Willow. He was in
Not.
Troll.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh, I know what you're talking about the little person actor. He's got
Yeah,
that kind of gruffy voice. Yeah, I know you're.
yeah.
Yeah, with the mustache.
He's still alive, but I thought it was cool. Like, you know, he he likes to appear in these roles. I mean, he didn't have to take on the roles, but it was awesome that they had him dress up in like a little creature outfit when
Yeah.
if people don't know, besides playing as the tenant in Trolls, he was
Hmm.
actually the creature in Trolls. He was the one dressed up in the troll outfit
He was the
and doing
actual
the voices.
troll.
Yeah, yeah,
I didn't know. I mean, I'm well aware of who he is as an actor. I didn't know he was. I didn't know he was the main troll
yeah.
character. But I guess
He
it
was
makes sense with the way he
yeah,
walks. He was.
he was the one turning everybody into like different magical creatures.
Yeah, what a wild movie that was. And it had
Yeah.
Julia Louise Dreyfus from Seinfeld. She was in it. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Running
she
around like
became like the
naked and
witness
everything.
or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a wild movie. I think Sonny Bono's in it. Doesn't he get turned into like a? He's the one that gets turned into like the pea pod that
The fort.
explodes and creates. Yeah, and creates like the
Yeah.
whole
The
forest.
force.
Yeah.
Which I thought
Did
was
you know?
funny because I think he was like the landlord. So it's like
Yeah. The other cool part about that movie is the main character, that kid. His name's Harry Potter. Like, what are the odds of that? Like that was his
right.
name, Harry Potter, and he's fighting trolls and teaming up with witches and stuff. Who would have saw that coming? But yeah, I mean, yeah, the troll movie. We won't speak of the other one
Yeah.
again, but yeah, just the amount of
And the second one, I
imagination.
think the second one I think was even supposed to be called Troll. They just added that to the title,
No, it's supposed to be called
if I'm
Goblin
not
or
mis
something. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly, but they call it Troll instead. I wish they would have gone with Goblin because they just ruined that
It-
idea.
yeah, they ruined the whole thing. And like remember like the name of the town was Goblin spelled backwards. It was like Neilbog. Like it was like that was
Yeah,
their big reveal. At the end.
right.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
I wish they made movies like that these days. And I know they try, and I know there's fans of that genre. Oh my gosh, what was the one I saw not too long ago? And why is the name escaping me? But it was kind of like a retake on Power Rangers and Ultraman, but in this really like violent, dark. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh man, I do. I just can't remember
I can't
what
remember the
it's
name of
called.
it.
But
Yeah, and
yeah.
um, so they try to do that nowadays, but it's just when they would do it back in the '80s, they had such a high film budget, and the practical effects were just
Yeah.
so incredible, and I
And
can't
and I
imagine.
think that's what it is that when we have practical effects, it just makes it so much better. When everything is CGI, it's just
Mhm.
horrible. Like
Y-
the
Yeah,
movie, like the movie had its good parts, but when they made the prequel to The Thing and it's all CGI, I thought it was just a bad idea,
it took you out
you
of the
know?
movie. I mean, it took you out of the
Yeah.
movie. The second one, the first thing. I mean, I saw a clip of it the other day, and it was still just where the head detaches off the guy and it falls on the ground, little spider legs pop out. I mean, man, that movie was 40 plus years ago. That's still a terrifying scene to watch, and it's because of the practical effects. It just didn't, you know, CG just really just takes you out of it. Like I can't think
Well,
of a
even
modern
with
horror movie. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, I was gonna say, like with you had like a insect bite someone and they mutated. Just I know the black and white one was good, but talking about creature features, Jeff
Mm-hmm.
Goldblum as the Fly was just such a great movie. Like
Dude,
I love that movie. Yes, it has its gross parts where he's throwing up and everything, but just the
mhm.
whole idea of him changing and then the monster design at the end, just a masterpiece.
Yeah, and and it was all practical, and it plays on our biggest fears, is because his body's falling apart in front of him when he's standing in front of the
Mhm.
mirror, and he's pulling his nail off. Like that's a
Yeah.
ingrained fear in all of us of like our bodies just deteriorating. And not only that, they took their time with that story. Like you felt horrible for him because he was
Oh, yeah.
as he was going through it, and then all the stuff Gina Davis had to go through, dealing with his character and becoming pregnant by him. And I mean, that's
Mhm.
just not only that, I mean, Mel Brooks produced that movie. So people went into that movie in 1986 thinking they were going to see a Mel Brooks comedy, like his take on The Fly, and it was going to be funny. They were not expecting
Yeah.
this Cronenberg just nightmare, like craziness. Um, and it just, it's Jeff
But
Goldblum,
but they
Gina
sold it so well,
Davis.
like yeah, like, when you think of now with Gina Davis or even now when you think of Jeff Goldblum and just the way he talks and everything,
Yeah,
in, interviews and stuff, just
yeah,
he sold that scene just so well. Like,
yeah. He
you can really
was,
see he's trying to be serious, and back then, he to a lot of women back then, he was a sexy guy,
yeah,
like, you
he
always
was the
wanted to sit
man.
with his shirt off. Yeah,
Yep, he was coming off a Buckaroo Banzai, and he was just like he
yeah,
was the bee's knees in the '80s.
yeah.
Um,
You had him in
yeah,
Earth Girls Are Easy,
he's Earth Girls Are Easy.
That was a funny movie.
Dude, well, I remember my 10th birthday. My parents took me and all my little friends in the neighborhood to go see that, and I'd never heard of it. And we were
Yeah.
just like jaws dropped, like, what did you just take us to see? And then but then it's got Damon Wayans and Jim Carrey and Jeff Goldblum and Gina. It's a crazy
Mhm.
movie. But yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, back to The Fly. That is I mean, that's a masterpiece. It holds up today, and that's the thing with movies today. It's just they just don't they just don't stand up. Like they're just not putting the work into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just it's just the practical effects in the body horror, The Fly. You can't even. It's when you think of The Fly in the 1950s, and then you try to compare it to the Jeff Goldblum one. It's not even the same. Like, they share the same title, and that's it.
Yeah.
It is nowhere near as intense. I mean, that's just a master of horror filmmaking.
Speaking of like old school like movies, I don't know if you ever seen it, but there was a Vincent Price horror movie, and Vincent Price, classic horror movie actor there. Props because he's from Missouri, St. Louis, and where I'm from. But just in the movie, he was trying to study like fear and talking about like people holding their emotions and they don't express their emotions, then it just conjures up them to pass out. And I think there was like a creature attached to it. Just, that was what I liked about the 1950s, when you had like you gone to the movie theaters, and if you're watching a creature feature with a giant bug or something, they would have like the special effect, the little props that they would have in the movie with like your seat vibrating, or like they'll have like the bug, a person dressed up like the Fly or something like that running through the audience. Just really classic stuff like that.
Yeah,
and it's a shame to do that now.
No, they don't. And it's, I think in the 50s, they were just trying so many gimmicks to, like, I think that was like smell-o-vision and 4D, and not 3D, but 4D. Yeah, that would be unreal to bring that back. I remember when the closest thing I ever experienced to that is I saw Nightmare on Elm Street 5 in the theaters. So, I don't know, I was 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was 11. One of the ushers at the beginning of the movie dressed up like Freddy Krueger, and he was walking through the audience, like looking for little kids underage not to see the movie so he could take them out. And it was just like, that was pretty scary as a little kid. It'd be, I don't think they could do that these days in movie theaters, but they did so many cool things back then. Just those gimmicks. I think there's a John Goodman movie called Matinee that's kind of about that similar thing, and it takes place in the 50s, and it's about doing.
Well, it's based off of the real life. I can't remember the name, but he plays the real life guy who actually decided to do all that stuff.
Oh, that's a true story.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that's based off of a person that really wanted, the guy who actually wanted to do that. So
yeah, he was like playing on because it was like during the time of the nuclear bombs going, nuclear bombs, and he was like playing on that. But the whole creature feature genre is something that's gone, and I wish it would come back. Just like drive-in movie theaters. I think you have one near you, up in your way. That's really cool.
Yeah, the Silver Moonlight.
Yes. Yeah, and that is an old school from the back in the day drive-in movie theater that still stands. Yeah, and it's just that whole movie going experience is just completely changed.
Yeah, it's one of those things that they still have it where like they'll have two screens, and you can watch one movie. You can watch two movies on one screen, or two movies on the other, or you could drive through different ones.
Yeah.
So,
and
you're for the vehicle, you're not paying for like per person, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while since I've gone.
And it's just it's old school. It looks exactly the same as it did back in back in the 50s. I thought during the pandemic, drive-in movies was definitely going to be a thing that was going to come back, and sadly it didn't. I was really hoping for that.
What I like now with the drive-in movies, sure, you got to make sure your car doesn't die, but you could, instead of having your window open and listening to the box, but then you have all the bugs and the heat, the hot weather coming in, they just, hey, switch your radio station to this and you'll be able to hear it.
Yeah.
So, everything is like, Bluetooth and everything now. So you could just have the radio on and listen to it. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it makes it a little easier instead of putting a giant speaker in your car.
Yeah.
Or having them.
Right.
Yeah. I think down in Fort Lauderdale, they have like the world's biggest drive-in called the Swap Shop. It's a flea market during the day, but they have like a 20+ screen drive-in theater down there. But
yeah.
But I don't know. Hopefully it's.
But with creature.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say with creature features, has there been like any other creature feature besides ghoulies, critters that you could really think of?
Munchies.
That brought. Oh yeah, Munchies. I forgot all about Munchies.
Yeah,
that was part of the whole like timeline too.
Yeah, that's almost like a cross between critters and gremlins.
Yeah.
There's Munchies. There's Terrorvision, which is really awesome.
Oh, Terrorvision.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we could talk about Terrorvision.
Yeah,
just with just the idea of that the creature will like disintegrate you and then lick up your remains with its giant tongue hand.
Yep. Yeah. And it's like supposed to be, it's a gross looking creature, but it's on a kind of almost somewhat cute how they designed it. And that's once again, it's one of those things where it's like you kind of let your guard down with it because you kind of sided with that thing because the people it was killing were not good people. You kind of sided with them. There was that, and then anything that was on the Monsters TV show kind of fits that same thing as well. It was just all these different little monsters and creatures.
Oh, you know what? I thought of another creature feature. Basket case. If you remember that.
Just it sounds very
basket case. Basically, basket case. You had this man and his twin brother, but his twin brother was like deformed. He had no legs, and he was just this giant creature with arms. And they kept him in a basket, but then he would go around killing everybody.
Why do I feel like not DVD, the VHS cover kind of sticks out to me. If that's what I'm thinking of.
I think I could bring up a picture, but just the 80s was definitely known for creature features. And it's just a shame, like you're saying, like they're not trying to bring it back. Just everything now is like supernatural and stuff like that.
They'll try to bring back the slasher genre. Even in the 80s, they had Swamp Thing, not the first Swamp Thing, which was good, but Swamp Thing Returns definitely fits under the creature feature. Because it was just Swamp Thing. There was definitely a lot more monsters in that.
Oh, mate, let me see.
Oh yeah, yep. Yes, I have seen that. That's and it's like this terrifying. Yeah. Yes, it's like unnerving what that thing is like as it's moving around. Yep.
Yeah.
That's probably why I haven't seen all of it because I saw the parts of it as a little kid and I was just like.
The first one was good, and then the second one, they had him like find a female version, and they just had like a weird sex scene. I'm like, what?
Doesn't that little monster just like kind of scream, and it's just very unnerving. Every aspect about that creature is just unnerving. I feel it, right? Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. I'm trying to think what other good ones there were. Tales from the Crypt had a bunch of them. There was one with the Ice Cream Man. I don't know if you ever saw that, where the Ice Cream Man had a conjoined twin. You remember? Yeah.
Yep.
And then the ventriloquist that once again had a conjoined twin, but it was under his hand, and he was the one doing the ventriloquist talking.
Oh yeah,
that was it was just this gross little bald creature.
But not even in one that was not even like a horror movie, but it was just a classic scene, and that was the twin on the stomach in Total Recall.
Yeah, Quaid.
Yeah, Quaid.
Quato. Well, his name was Quato, but I just remember him saying Quaid. So I mean, it wasn't just him. I mean, it was like the people that lived on, in that kind of derelict section of Mars where they had the mutant heads and a little girl that had like a Cyclops head.
Yeah.
I just I don't know why they don't go back to making those movies. They were just brilliant.
I think it's one of those things, just horror, just like with any type of genre, there's just so much. Like, for a while, everything was supernatural. The paranormal activity, Mama, you had Insidious, you have all these like supernatural demon stuff going on, like, and then Annabelle came out with the supernatural, and then, they're like, "Oh, Annabelle did so great. Let's make Chucky the TV show," which great TV show. Season 1, 2, season 2 was amazing.
Yeah.
But I really want to see creature features come back.
Yeah. Same here.
And hopefully, I mean, even if it's not a movie, you could easily do stuff with streaming service and TV shows now.
Yeah. And you could just have, I don't know, 6 episodes to stream. I wish streaming services would do live. I mean, not live like it's happening now, but like 8:00, and Netflix is showing this episode right now. HBO Max tends to do it when like a new Last of Us comes out.
Yeah.
But I wish they would kind of go back to doing that, and they could do creature features. But try to check out Barbarian on streaming, because that's definitely a monster movie. So it would fall into the category, and it's all practical. There's no CG, and it's just it's like mutant monster, but it's the story and the setting they did a real good job. Very creative, and when you watch it, you're just like, it just kind of comes out of left field. Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about it a little, but what draws you to really loving creature features out of any other horror genre? Because there's so many genres out there.
I think it's because of how I grew up. And hold on, I'm about to pull out one of my a toy that I had in my childhood. What's that? Going through my closet.
Not a problem.
Okay, so that's a boggle.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
And it's an actual puppet. It's made out of latex. You put your hands on it with your eyes out. But I mean, that was a toy that I had in like 1988.
See, I thought you were getting ready to pull out something that I had, and I wish I still had My Pet Monster.
Oh yes, I had one of that. I mean, that was the ultimate wrestling.
Yeah, right.
Used to,
especially if you could find a my Pet Monster with the handcuffs, you were like, that's some money right there.
Yeah, because they would just snap off. I honestly, it's because of, I mean, it's just the decade I grew up in. And I had some kooky friends growing up. I had an older brother that was about 3 years older than me. So as he would get into horror movies, you tag along with your older siblings. So, I mean, I was, as horrible as it is to say, I was like 5 years old when I first watched The Exorcist, and 5 years old when I watched Nightmare on Elm Street. By the age of 8, I had a Freddy Krueger poster, full on, like 4-foot high Freddy Krueger poster in my bedroom. That I would look at like every night I went to sleep.
Well, it's like, it's like with the 80s and 90s, they were trying to get kids into it. They're like, okay, we got Tales from the TV show. What are we going to do with this TV show? Let's make it into a cartoon series,
Yeah.
And we talked about how, like, just the 80s and 90s, they find a way to make anything into a cartoon series. I mean, we talked about, because you used to work for Trauma, right? And they made Toxic Avenger.
Toxic Avenger. Which Toxic Avenger, the movie, the first one, is just like one of the most hardcore movies you'll ever see in your life. But somehow they spun it into the movie. Yeah. Fortunately, not only myself, but my friends, we all had cool parents that they just, go ahead and watch this stuff. So that time period.
One of the cool things
Oh, go
Yeah, I
ahead.
was gonna say one of the cool things, like they had the toys. I wish I still had these toys. I know they have like the Garbage Pail Kid cards, like they come out
Mm-hmm.
with them around Halloween time. But I had some of the toys, but my older sister, she's only like a couple years older than me, but we used to watch Mad Balls. You remember Mad Balls?
Yes. Yep. Yes, I do.
The cart
Yes.
like they had the VHS tape with the cartoons, and then there's like, oh, besides the cartoons, you could collect all these different like characters. You had
Yep.
the Cyclops, you had the Mummy, all that stuff.
Yep. I had.
Just
I think his name was Globulus, the one with the eye that was pulling out and had green skin. I have Garbage Pail Kids series 3 sitting right next to me. I mean, I can pull that out too, but yeah, it was just like this era of just grotesque, cool stuff that kids just like ate up, and it's it was just a heck of a time to be a child, and and that sticks with you as you
right.
get older, and that it makes it fun. I love it. Um, but yeah, and like you said, like the Mad Balls, like VHS, look like they had like the picture of the Mad Balls, but like the whole rest of the VHS box had like rainbow coloring and rainbow lettering. I forgot the company that put it out, but it was like
Right.
super kid friendly. But you
Sure.
know, the content of the characters was just really gross. They attempted to put
pretty much.
Garbage Pail. They attempted to put Garbage Pail Kids on Saturday mornings on CBS. They ran one episode, and then parents freaked out and called in. They never ran another one. But you can watch those on YouTube.
But
So yeah,
the movie though, the movie of the Garbage
dude,
Pail Kids were
that's
such
a masterpiece. People hate it, but that movie's a masterpiece.
right.
Just a bunch of little people in costumes with giant heads, and oh my gosh, like like
just barfing and puking on people.
Yeah, puking. And remember, like they wanted to arrest them and put them in like the state home of the uglies. It was like a mental asylum.
Yeah,
Only if you were ugly.
they had us. Yeah, and they had like Santa Claus and a bunch of other people in there. It's like,
Yeah,
what the
Santa
hell?
Claus. That's right. Santa Claus is in there. Yeah. And once again, it's just all practical effects, and and if done right to a little kid, that's just it's so mesmerizing to look at, and if it's not overly scary.
Before we end off here, there's one creature show that I forgot to mention, and I think he helped direct it or not, but Freak Show.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, with
if people don't,
wait, you said Freak Show, not Creep Show, right? With
ours freaked.
Yeah, Freaked. Yeah, with Bill from Bill and Ted.
Yeah.
Yes. And Randy
Alex
Quaid.
Winter.
Alex Winter.
Yeah, Alex Winter.
And Randy Quaid.
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves is in that.
Such a great movie. Yeah, he was the wolf. He was the wolf.
Yeah,
boy.
he's the wolf boy. Yep. And it was an uncredited role, and he just did it for the heck of it.
Even though you knew that was him once you listened to the voice.
Yeah, once you hear his voice, yeah. And that once Mr. T was in it, and it was just prosthetics and practical, just There's
and then you had Goworth. I think that's Goworth. That's like the hands.
Oh, the sock. Bobcat. Goldthwait. Yeah, he was the sock puppet, and they took his hands off, and he's like, "Oh, make it."
And blood came out and everything. And then you had the eyeballs with the Uzis.
With the Jamaican curls on.
Yeah.
That movie is, and I think that came out in like '93 or something. But that was just an amazing movie. Same with this Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, but I don't know if you've ever seen like Return of the Killer Tomatoes. It's kind of falls along that same thing.
Oh yeah.
It's just another wacky comedy, just creature stuff, and
turned into a cartoon.
Yeah, it became a cartoon. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where I guess we were just lucky enough to grow up during that. But it's definitely left an impression on me as an adult and inspired me, like when I do stuff and, you know, or if I'm like sculpting on the computer, like just to make gross, not gross, like it's like you don't want to look at it, but gross fun, like you're kind of mesmerized, like, oh, that's kind of cute and disgusting at the same time. And and it just opens up a whole nother level of imagination. So
well, it's
yeah,
like with not with the first one, but the second one, they brought in, the whole like their version of Gizmo, where they had like a good tomato that talked, and it was like furry, and then you had the girl. Of course, they had to have the girl shower naked, but it was a girl that was turned into a human.
Yeah, she was a tomato that turned into a human. Yeah, and George Clooney's like first movie, which is even way crazy weird, is that he's in that.
Right.
Yeah, it's
all right.
Yeah, it's just it's
well,
crazy.
We're at the hour and 21.
All right.
But it was a good talk. It was good having you on. No, it's all right.
Same here, man.
I know you're like, hey, I gotta get back on. I enjoyed being on the show. I gotta come back on. And of course you're always welcome.
I appreciate it, man. I don't get to talk like this.
It's a shame
all the time with people I work with and stuff.
It's a shame my co-host couldn't come on, but I don't know what we're gonna do, but me and my co-host, we have to sit down and decide what we're gonna do for our 100th episode. Is 4 episodes away. Gotta do something fun.
Yeah. What do you? I mean, you guys got anything in mind, or you're still planning it out?
I don't know. We'll have to plan it out, but I definitely want to try to bring on like a couple guests, like have like a round table.
Yeah,
that'd be fun.
Well, I mean, I saw you brought on the stunt woman from Mortal Kombat, and I was like, whoa! I'm like, whoa, really?
Yeah,
was awesome.
She's a really nice woman. I really like having her on, and anybody go out there, go support her. Margene Holden, really nice lady. She was in Mortal Kombat. She was Ariana in the Beastmaster TV show. She's done stuff for John Carpenter. Just a really nice lady, and it was a blast to have her on the show.
Yeah, yeah. When I saw that, I was like, whoa! I'm like, that's cool. That's a cool get, man. That's know.
Well, it's like even with you when you talked about that you worked on you worked for Trauma. I mean, some people, depending on who they are, they're not going to be like, okay, what's so great about Trauma? But he, who's a fan of this genre and stuff, is like, I know what Trauma is. Trauma was my childhood. Trauma, sure, Trauma had other movies, but when I think of Trauma, I think of Toxic Avenger.
Sergeant Kabuki Man, and
yeah, exactly. Like Trauma, like when you think of a Spider-Man, is is like the spokesboy for Marvel. I think Toxie is the spokesman for Trauma. Like, sure, they had other movies, but Toxic Avenger was like their golden child right there.
Yeah, he's their Mickey Mouse for sure. Maybe that's someone that might be your 100th show get is, just email Trauma and try to get Lloyd Kaufman for 5 minutes. That's what he does, man. Like, there's a whole, he always has an assistant that just sets that stuff up, and he's a
I know one thing that I want to do. I know one thing I want to do at some point, just because I was a fan of the sure they had other movies, but I'm a big Puppet Master fan. To have someone from Full Moon on the show would just be really great to talk to.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, you're talking about an actor or just someone that worked on the production?
Just anyone. Like, even if you had like not just the actors, but like one of the people like helped designing the puppets, that would have been just great.
Yeah. I mean, Yeah. I mean, you can hop on I mean, I would just go to IMDb and look at the list,
Yeah.
and then hop on Facebook or they have social. One of them's going to have social media.
Right.
At this stage in this year, the date of that, they would love to talk about that stuff.
Right.
Just yeah. Let me know. Maybe I'll do a little research for you and try to find
Right.
someone for your homework.
Awesome.
I'll ask around.
Awesome. Well, it was good having you on. Definitely
Yeah, man.
talk to you in the future about getting you back on. Probably, like I said, we'll probably get you on for the 100th episode and some other ones.
Yeah, I would
And
love to.
yeah,
This is
also
fun.
to get get you on to talk about episode 3 and just
Yeah.
awesome stuff. But
Thanks, man.
thank you, Pops. Thank you, everyone who watched the show live. Thank you, anyone who's going to be watching it afterwards. But you all have a great weekend, and I'll see you all next week.